how honest you always were. You were really looking for information. You weren't trying to prove anything. You just wanted to know what the truth was. And how different our understanding of the news was because you lived in your world.
Yes.
And I lived in my world. And I remember putting things up on the chalkboard and you said, none of those things happen.
None of those things I knew about.
Yeah.
Not
and they
at
were
all.
Big stories to conservatives. It was weird.
Never. And it used to be the strangest thing when I would come here and visit you that I'd get on the plane and leave the LA feeds and arrive here, completely different news, completely different stories. Yeah. And I'm like, this is insane. They're two different worlds.
So you've been trying to bridge the gap for a long time. And we talked about shows where you could actually talk. Things have only gotten worse.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that was the big problem was the screen world. And I call it the screen world. All the edits that magically appear for us on our phone is the screen world, is not the real world. It's a very particular point of view and very highly edited. And so to me, for 7 years, it's what is the truth? And every time I would bring people together, 7 people, 10 people, 50 people in Alaska or Dallas or New York, they were never the cliches that I was led to believe. And I constantly was wondering, how do they connect? And why wouldn't they connect? And really, it came down to the power of the screen world is now the way we see the world. Not people can be standing in front of us and we cannot see them or their humanity because we see them through the edits that we think we know about them.
It is really terrifying because that's, we were talking off the air. Children's suicide and depression is off the charts.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And I think it's because of this. There's nothing real. You don't really know people. There's no and COVID only made it worse. No real connections going on.
And that's the thing. It's so funny. Everyone seems to be lacking true, authentic connection. And the thing that I realized over 7 years is that true connection is not remotely information-based, even if we're all living in an information age, that the words we exchange are 7% of communication. It's the body language, it's the tone, it's all of those things that create humanity. None of those you get from a screen. You just get the words, which is why sequentially posting at each other gets us absolutely nowhere fast. And so I kept trying to think, what is a way to do this, to hard reset actually physical people in a room so that they can see each other and not see the edits that they think they know about each other? And that took 7 years of testing and testing and testing.
So how are you going to do this?
So it's called Connect Effect. And what it is, it's an in-person, it's an entertainment experience. And it's designed that way because I reached out to a policy institute and they said, everything we're doing about bridging and facilitated conversations not working. People just show up with more information and they just keep exchanging it and no one actually listens and no one actually learns or is impacted. So it was, how can I get people in a physical room, and we do 50 to 100 people at a time, to really see each other, the people in the room, the real world, and not the screen world, not seeing each other through the screen world. And it's a hard reset of their humanity.
So how do you do that? Because I would think that you would, depending on where you are, you would have a lot of conservatives show up and some very timid liberals, or a lot of liberals show up and some very timid conservatives, and you would fight an agenda.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So how are you getting that?
The thing is, the actual Connect Effect, what it is that when you connect with someone in a meaningful in-person way, in person, human to human, you'll talk openly and honestly. It's how we met. When we sat down opposite each other in 2016, and I came with my information, we just looked at each other and we're like, oh, you're just a human being who wants to know.
Yeah.
Once you have that connection, you'll talk openly and honestly. When you talk openly and honestly, you will understand. And that understanding deepens the connection. That's the Connect Effect.
Right.
Now people are talking without the connection, and it's just this exchanging of information. So they don't talk first. They sit back, and from the moment the doors open, there's music, there's images on the screen, two sides of stories that people have never seen, whether it's edits they've seen in the news. Oh yeah, that's what CNN ran, that's what Fox, side by side. And it constantly says, which edit do you see? Which edit do you not see? And we're constantly running through history. Here's an edit you do know, an edit. So before we even start the program, they're seeing they're only seeing one edit.
And so I would imagine it's very important to let the audience know that you're not trying to change them politically.
Not at all.
You're just trying to say, you don't know the whole story.
You don't know the whole story.
Sides.
And the whole story doesn't necessarily even matter when you are trying to fix things in your world. You and I did a podcast special a while ago where we brought 7 Americans together to talk about guns. And
it was so great.
And they just spiraled and spiraled until the NRA firearms instructor and the Moms Demand Action woman spent time together, made a joke, and suddenly all the defenses were gone because they had connected.
Yeah.
And then they talked openly, they understood, and they realized that we're 90% there.
Yeah.
But when they were all in a room, guarded with their information,
before we started it, we were both concerned this could be a nightmare.
Absolutely.
And by the end, I think the Marxist professor was like, this was great.
Yeah, because they stop seeing each other through the screens. And the screens come at you all day, every day. And the way the screens work is for attention extraction, is what they call it at Google. That's all they're doing. And so whatever you like, they'll send you more of it. If you're angry about this, they'll send you more. Because the real facts are that anger makes money. The easiest shift to create in a human being is anger.
Yeah.
What travels faster than any virus? Fear. And so if the screens are constantly making you feel the world is burning constantly, then you are never going to be able to connect. But they make cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching more money the more you're watching. And so we hard reset the shared humanity of the people in the room. And it's very interesting because at some point they start realizing, wait, I was going to say that, but I only know that from a screen. And so we say to people, talk about what you know. Did you work on the... Great, tell us about that. If you didn't, it's your time to sit back and listen because you received a screen edit that was designed to make you upset and angry, to look at more, to look at more, to look at more, to look at more ads. And so I'm trying to get people, the amazing thing is when people meet in the real world, they're constantly engaging each other with what they know from the screen, which has little to no relevance to the person that they're talking to.
The first one is happening where? In Orange County?
In Orange County this Saturday, April 30th. I'm working with an organization called Civic Genius, and I really was relentless when I was finding a partner that they did not have a political affiliation. Because I cannot tell someone what the way they should think. I don't live their life. I haven't lived their lives thousands and thousands of days as them.
It's actually not I shouldn't say that. The problem is people who are trying to tell people what to think, not how to think, what to think. You will believe this. I don't care what side it's on. You believe this, and there's no compromise.
You must believe this, or you are bad.
Bad. That's what's killing us.
Yeah,
that's what's killing us.
And when you and I met years ago, I came in with this perception of what I thought you were, and when we sat, the humanity clicked in. And we were able to talk. And all I want, the whole point of this, is I just want people to stop fighting in their families and stop fighting in their communities. Because if you can't sit down with the people in your community to solve your problems, no one wins.
So what age group are you
This
doing?
is mostly 18 and over, but 18 to 80. It can be anyone.
And when you go... do you have to participate or can you just watch?
You can. So everyone sits and everything's designed, the way the seats are set up, the way the screen works. It's all highly, highly, highly produced. So everyone sits in this very large U. So there's no hiding in the back. But how
it's
people...
like an AA meeting.
It's like... you can't go anywhere. You must stay. But not everyone speaks. And who speaks is random. It's actually done through a way inside their pouches. Some people have a chip and some people don't. And the people with blue chips have to stand up and then they have a conversation. It's a way, but before...
So you're not speaking to... I mean, you are speaking in front of the whole group, but you're not speaking and having interaction with the whole group.
No.
The whole group is kind of channeling it through different conversations between...
Correct. And a lot of them, we say it's one story told between two worlds. One is the real world, all of us in the room, and the other is all the media we have on the screen. And so the screen plays a large part in it with edits and media coming at the audience, showing them, well, what is true? Because if this is true on the screen, it can't be true in the real world. And we're constantly juxtaposing the two, and it really ends up being this mind-blowing hard reset.
So are you going to have video there? Okay. Can you return maybe and show me some video and give me the results of what this happened?
We can. We actually have two tests on the website, connecteffect.us, under testimonials.
Oh, okay.
One, we took women, and we said, if women, once connected, could they solve each other's most deep, challenging question? So we took these total strangers, didn't know each other, connected them, and they're reading these unbelievable, vulnerable questions like, why am I single my whole life? Why do I draw men that would abuse me? And the audience helps them find the answer.
That's unbelievable.
It's incredible because all that happens is we have a problem, we go to an expert. We have a problem, we go to an expert. Diagnosed, medicated. Sometimes we just need opinions of other people and social buffering, and that doesn't exist anymore. So that was one test. The other was at a university because we had students at this university afraid of each other, not just physically, but ideologically.
Oh, yeah.
And so we thought, could we take students once connected after 60 minutes, would they be open to the other side's ideology? And you look at the video, they were. They saw the whole thing differently, and they realized that all these people in the real world in the room are not the enemies that they perceive coming through the edits.
So how do you get people to, I mean, are you just traveling the country? Are you asking for places to host you?
We're looking for organizations. We're looking for churches, synagogues, anywhere where people have stopped talking, which is pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere.
We're looking, and it's not just led by me. It's a system that's replicated and designed to be done by many people. The system is called EPIC. Forbes described it was a game changer a few years ago. It's a different way of approaching people that you have to engage through equalization. That's the E. If I don't look at you as an equal, what are the point are we talking about? Like, why am I talking to you if I don't think you're an equal? And then beyond that, the P is personalization. I don't care what you read, because whatever you read, you've got stats, I've got stats. You've got articles, I've got articles. Now we go nowhere. What do you know? What have you experienced of racism? What have you experienced of suffering? That's what I need to know. But if you I kept bridging these conversations, and I had 7 people in the room and 480 opinions. And suddenly Nancy Pelosi was there and Mitch McConnell. And I'm like, why are they in the room? They're certainly not going to be helping you fix your problem in your school. And so it's personalization. Then information gathering. The thing I tell people is stop talking about what you know. We know what you know. Ask people, what do I not know?
That is, I think that is one of the real keys to, if people say, I can't talk to them, or I need to change their mind. If you're approaching a conversation that way, you are saying to yourself, they don't have anything of value to teach me.
Yes.
And when you both exchange that, just the basic thing, and I don't mean stats, I mean you as a person.
Yes.
How did you get there? As soon as you get there, things change.
I always ask people, why are we not cyclopses? Why do we have 2 eyes that do the exact same thing, not even an inch and a half apart? Because that's the only way to see depth and perspective. So I tell people, look at the world with your view. You need the other view to see the world in more than 2 dimensions. You have to know what you don't know. Constantly, I would come to the Blaze, and you and I would sit down, whether we were traveling on a project, and I would learn so much about the world that I never knew, and vice versa.
Likewise.
And it was the only way that I saw things with depth. It was no longer a 2-dimensional edit. In the screen world, it was 3-dimensional in the real world.
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We got to wrap up. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. The scripture, there must be opposition in all things.
All of it must be.
We don't want to argue, and you've got to agree to one side. No, there must be opposition in all things.
For solutions, yes.
Yes, and to see depth.
Yes.
So what has happened with the Dobbs case?
We have Roe versus Wade overruled, as well as Casey.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't think I ever thought I would see this day, to be honest with you. But it's a good day.
We have talked about this. We have been together for 25 years, and we both said never in our lifetime would this happen.
Nope. I didn't.
Oh, my gosh.
It's being widely...
Lord, please hear the voice of your people. We are trying to mend our ways. We are sorry it has taken us this long, but please hear your people. Please forgive us for what we have done. My gosh. Is the ruling, does it look to be the same as the original Alito ruling?
I'm just going through it now. It does seem to be a 6-3 decision. Which is, there was a question of whether Roberts would come on board for this. Looks like he has. So, does seem to be a 6-3 decision.
Just let that sink in, America. What Ruth Bader Ginsburg said. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that this was unjustly and decided, Roe versus Wade. She thought it was flawed. And it was. the idea that abortion is covered in the Constitution is not true. It is not true. And everything that is not in the Constitution doesn't make it unconstitutional. It just means it goes to the states to decide. That is the law of the land and has been forever. Even Justice Ginsburg said that.
The relevant portion here at the end of the opinion, we end this opinion where we began. Abortion presents a profound moral question. The Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Roe and Casey arrogated that authority. We now overrule those decisions and return that authority to the people and their elected representatives. The judgment of the Fifth Circuit is reversed, and the case is remanded for further proceedings consistent with this opinion. It is so ordered.
Okay. Our producers need to be watching the White House and all others who are going to come out in a statement. This means Jane's revenge is going to be, at least what they say, is they are going to be lighting cities on fire tonight. I'm prayerful that doesn't happen, but I wouldn't doubt it. The media is going to stir things up like there is no tomorrow. But we can beg the Lord for peace and protection on all sides. You know, I think it is so important to know that we have to be on God's side, because he's not picking sides. He doesn't. He loves all of his children equally. And we just try to do what he wants us to do. So pray for all of those who are terrified about what this means, all those who are, I think, misguided. And pray for peace to wash over us. I doubt, I have no idea what the Lord wants. Whatever the Lord wants, we'll deal with it. All right. Would you make sure that we have talked to Levitt's office, and if we can, we'll do it on the bottom of the hour. My apologies to him. I don't mean to be rude, but sorry.
I hope we can prioritize his local race over the Dobbs decision. Glenn, I don't understand why you didn't do that. It was really rude of you to cut him off in the middle of that. I mean, what could you possibly be talking about? Only tens of millions of children potentially are on the road to living instead of not being alive. But I want to make sure he gets his words in here, because I know that was a high priority to him. So we'll get back to him as soon as possible. I'm glad he prioritized that. It's a really important moment for him to make that personal argument, and I'm glad he made it.
I don't care. Can we get? Let me. I'm sorry, but we don't have another. We don't have a break long enough. Can we get analysis on bottom of this hour? Because if we get analysis on this hour, if they have time to read it, get analysis on, and then move David to the next hour. If we can't get analysis because they haven't had time to read it yet, then let's. I'm sorry. I'm just shocked that this came out. We were just having this conversation before we went on the air, and Stu said, "What are you going to do if the Dobbs case comes out?" And I said, "It's not going to come out." And he said, "But if it comes out," and I said, "It's not going to come out, but if it does, we have to take that." So I'm just shocked because I did not expect that to happen.
Yeah, Glenn, we can read one excerpt here from the ruling. "We do not pretend to know how our political system or society will respond to today's decision overruling Roe and Casey. And even if we could foresee what will happen, we would have no authority to let that knowledge influence our decision." Gosh, if that is not the central problem with the Supreme Court so often. So glad they pointed that out. We can only do our job, which is to interpret the law, apply long-standing principles of stare decisis, and decide this case accordingly. We therefore hold that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion, period. Roe and Casey must be overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion must be returned to the people and their elected representatives.
It is the best of times. It is the worst of times. We're going to see miracles in our lifetime, and I think we just saw one.
The court writes, the precedents should be respected, but sometimes the court errs, and occasionally the court issues an important decision that is egregiously wrong. When that happens, stare decisis is not a straitjacket. This is something, of course, we've been arguing for decades, and seemingly is obvious, as you point out. I mean, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg supported this at one point in her career. Many liberal court watchers feel the same way. This is not a conservative. There's a lot of passion for conservatives on the pro-life side of this, and there's very little appetite for that on the left. However, there is appetite for this being a terrible law and an egregiously poor decision made when Roe versus Wade was initially decided. And so the left has been on board with this, not to say we shouldn't have abortion, which, again, this is not what this does. And it's important to remember that overturning Roe versus Wade does very little to stop abortion in this country. It's a very important first step.
It won't.
But it will. Anyone who wants to get an abortion in this country will still be able to get them. This is why the work that, we've talked about some of these organizations we've worked with is so important. It's about still changing hearts and minds. This will not do it on its own, but it is an important step.
So do you remember when I was at Fox and I was talking about why it was so important to be good, be steady, don't fight back the way they want you to fight back? Because Martin Luther King was right. When you put good versus evil side by side, the American people will know it, and they will recognize it, and they will see it. A lot of Americans have been duped, and a lot of Americans, it's very, very difficult. You learn this from the history of Germany and other places. Once you decide and you've gone so far mentally down the road, it takes a huge amount of courage to say, holy cow, I was wrong about this, and switch sides. But I think you're going to see states, California, New York, they are going to become abortion mills. They are going to do abortion vacations. They are going to push the limits as far as they're going to say, if it's up to the state, you will see laws in some states that say after a baby is born, you can kill it. They've done it already in Chicago. They've done it illegally in Chicago. They talked about it in Virginia. They're going to do it in New York. They're going to do it in California. Believe me. And this will be the place where I think a lot of Americans will have to decide, can I live in a state like that? Can I be part of that? This is so far, this will become so far over the edge that most Americans will be appalled by what is happening. Even those who believe that they want to have reasonable limits to abortion, they will not find it reasonable what these death states will do. Josh Hammer, he is the opinion editor of Newsweek. He is the host of the Josh Hammer Show. He is really quite brilliant, one of the leading minds in the conservative movement, I think. Josh Hammer joins us now to tell us, what did you find in this decision?
Glenn, great to be back with you on such a momentous and really is emotionally powerful day, honestly. So, look, as you said, this dropped recently. Funny enough, I was in the middle of giving a guest lecture for an organization. I'm on the advisory board of when it dropped. So I barely had any time to kind of skim through here, let alone get to the concurring and dissenting opinions. But it looks like this looks very similar to the draft opinion that was leaked by the Politico story a month and a half ago in early May. And I think those of us who were praying that the 5 justices from this leaked draft majority opinion would have the fortitude to stiffen their spines against this unprecedented assault now know that our prayers were answered, Glenn. That's really my takeaway right now. This looks a lot like the leaked opinion. Justice Thomas and Justice Kavanaugh have some brief concurring opinions, but unbelievable. And really just holding aside the constitutional law stuff for a second here, just speaking as pro-lifers, on a day like today, I think we really just need to pause. And I tweeted this out earlier. We need to just be grateful for our half century of pro-life activist forebears who, this issue could have gone away after 1973. That was a long time ago, 1973. I mean, this issue could have just gone away. We owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to the pro-life moral activists, political activists, and of course, yes, the legal activists who fought day in and day out to make sure that this grave injustice stayed front and center of our national political conscience. And in many days, today is the culmination of a half century of fighting for truth and justice. But in many ways, it's also a new beginning for the pro-life fight as well, interestingly.
How do you mean a new beginning for the fight? I think it's going to turn, I think we're going to see abortion turn even darker in those states that allow it. Is that what you're meaning by this?
Well, look, for a half century now, Roe versus Wade and its progeny, specifically the Planned Parenthood versus Casey case of 1992, they took away from the states, obviously. They arrogated authority away from the states, the ability to attempt to nationally codify one view of the morality of abortion. It happened to be a profoundly immoral view. So the fight now shifts to the states. And the pro-life activists in all the 50 states, especially obviously in red states, purple states, admittedly some blue states like New York and California probably won't be able to touch them there. But we have to make sure that our side is well positioned in the state capitals for every red, purplish, and probably even light blue state to make sure that we fight for successful, cogent, and morally consistent pro-life legislation. The state of Oklahoma, actually, just north of Texas, where I know you are, Glenn, they've been leading on this, actually. Governor Kevin Stitt signed into law a fantastic pro-life bill there in Oklahoma a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago or so at this point, that basically just bans abortion straightforward from conception. And there are some, obviously, life of the mother exceptions and so forth, but we really need to start thinking about trying to craft legislation now at the state level. But to your point, yes, I do fear, of course, that blue states will only double down in their radicalism. And unfortunately, that's probably only going to lead to an ever greater divide in our country than we currently have today. But obviously, we're going to save, at the end of the day here, we're going to save millions and millions of unborn children. We are going to save human beings who can grow up to cure cancer, who can win Nobel Prizes. This is just a tremendous win for the human species. I don't really know how to say it than that.
I tell you, I saw the stat that I think it was last year or the year before, 20% of all pregnancies ended in abortion. 20%. Wow. That's a shocking number. And we do have our work cut out for us because I think that these states are going to double down. But I think, God doesn't waste anything. There is no waste with God. Even the worst things that could possibly happen turn out to be something good. You know what I mean? You're like, holy cow, how did that just happen? And I think that evil is going to fully come unmasked. I'm telling you, Josh, I don't know how you feel about this. I think this could be the day of America's Kristallnacht. I can see these pro-life centers being burned to the ground today. They're calling for a night of rage around the country. I think evil is going to show itself, and that'll scare the American people. Hopefully.
I've been thinking about this a lot this week, actually, because I've been bracing for kind of a new George Floyd Summer of Love kind of thing happening this summer, coming to a city or a suburb near you, unfortunately, myself. look, I live in Florida, Glenn. I know you live in Texas. It is a moment like this where I do think that where you live matters, and who your mayor is, who your governor is matters, because law and order and rioting and anarchy is not really a federal issue. I mean, it is to a limited extent. I mean, in June 2020, Tom Cotton wrote this op-ed that was pretty controversial at the time. I happen to agree with it, where he said, quote unquote, send in the troops. And there is some federal legislation from the Reconstruction era that would justify that. But most kind of quelling and quashing of anarchy does happen, constitutionally speaking, at the state and local level. So at a moment like this, where I fear that you are probably not wrong, I take some solace that Governor DeSantis is my governor. I think Texans, should take some solace that they are represented by a Republican governor and state legislature there as well. So I fear that you are right. I pray, obviously, that no one is harmed. I mean, I fear, though, that something bad is happening. And at the end of the day, of course, that does not mean the justices cannot do what they are supposed to do. So thank God they did that.
So, Josh, have you looked into what the White House has been saying? The White House yesterday, in fact, I think, do we have a clip of this, what the White House said yesterday about the guns, and then they were turned to the SCOTUS ruling for Roe versus Wade? Do we have that, please?
Will the president accept this decision as legitimate, even if he disagrees with it?
It's going to come from the Supreme Court, so it's going to be a decision that we certainly are going to respond to. So I'll leave it at that. I mean, it's just like any other Supreme Court decision, just like the one that they did today on guns.
So the White House won't say that they're going to accept it, which I don't think they will. They're talking now about taking doctors and moving them into places like Oklahoma or Texas where abortions will be outlawed, and putting doctors on our military bases to perform abortions. I mean, where does this go when you have a government that is in defiance of one branch of the government?
So there's a lot to unpack here. So we should start from first principles. The idea of judicial supremacy, and this is a peculiar thing to say on a day like today where such a pro-life victory has happened, admittedly. But if we're going to be intellectually consistent here, the idea of judicial supremacy, the idea that the justices have the sole and exclusive ability to interpret the Constitution for themselves, and no other constitutional actor in Article 1 or Article 2, let alone the states, has the ability to independently interpret it, that is erroneous. In fact, actually, it was really Abraham Lincoln, who in the Dred Scott case famously opposed judicial supremacy and flouted the Dred Scott ruling, at least as it pertained to everyone other than Dred Scott himself. So I have actually argued in formal legal scholarship and in a law review article, actually, that the Lincolnian view of how each branch of government should interpret the Constitution for itself in its own ambit is correct. Having said that, there is a thing called prudence, and there is a thing called comedy. And in a moment like today, when it really does look like, and I agree with you, that we are now bracing for riots through the streets, when the political rhetoric is at DEFCON 1, when people are trying to assassinate Supreme Court justices, I think it would be, at a bare minimum, a profoundly imprudent act for the Biden administration to try to undermine this ruling. Now, what they might do is they might try to kind of issue some kind of limp executive orders or issue some regulations that might try to kind of undermine it at the edges here. But at the end of the day, the idea that this returns to the states, there's not really a whole lot they can do about that. I mean, basically, at this point, if red states throughout the country, Kentucky, West Virginia, Kansas, whatever, if they want to go ahead and ban abortion, what can the Biden administration literally do about that? I mean, short of sending in the National Guard to protect Planned Parenthood if the state legislature of Kentucky goes ahead and bans it, there's really not a whole lot they can do. And it's very difficult to envision a world in which the Biden administration literally sends in troops to red states to protect Planned Parenthood if that state legislature goes ahead and bans it. So practically speaking, this is like a lot of tough talk and rhetoric. This obviously is a campaign year in 2022. So there's really not a whole lot that, practically speaking, they can do to actually prevent red and purple states from enacting pro-life legislation.
I'm glad to hear that. I know that they have been working on things. I mean, he has said, there's executive orders that I can employ. There are things that I can do. He's talked about a national public health emergency, which I think is crazy. But I would hope that the president would come out today and say, we strongly disagree with this. And you're right. The court is not the end all. But the court did not end abortion. It just said the people should decide. I think that's the best kind of court ruling on any of it. The people should decide what this is and send it back to the states.